Hello everybody, this will be number 2 for today. Today we'll do a bunch. I was going to write some, give you some scriptures, but when I do a bunch in one day, we're going to talk about the last video, the first one for today we mentioned. I'll just put these like 1, 2, 3 like I did the other day. But Jesus, he gave, this is, I think it's Matthew 24, but that's the prophecy. What I want you to see, some of this, as far as you can apply what we're teaching on the book of Revelation to some of these. Because in Revelation we're seeing the kingdom of God. I quoted a psalm the other day. It said, "Why did the heathen rage and the nations are imagine a vain thing? They gather together against the Lord and against his Christ. But God will have them in derision, or they will be running." I quoted a verse, and I read a few that speak the same theme, that there comes a time where certain injustices in society and the earth. This morning in the, I just got out of church, and I'm at the ranch, and we had an African priest from Africa. And he talked a little bit about Boko Haram. He talked a little bit about how the other world lives that we don't experience. Boko Haram is that Al-Qaeda, ISIS-affiliated group in Africa. And they've actually committed more horrendous crimes, the kidnapping of the kids and the 200-something kids killed and all in the school. This is all world news. A lot of Christians don't follow that. But there comes a season. In many of the things you've seen me talk about, for many years I had a lot of street friends. And that's how I learned a lot of stuff that went on. And it was always amazing to me that I'd send emails initially about a lot of this stuff to commissioners and mayors. They're going to be a little liable now, because it's at the stage where I write to the Justice Department about these things, and when they finally investigate and things come out, people are held liable in government if they were informed that maybe you had crimes committed by police officers, and if you informed certain entities and it was with their knowledge that nothing happened, or they didn't do what was proper, they were informed of a crime, so they become held liable. I'm sure when I initially emailed some of these things, that people think, oh, that can't go on. No, it did. It does go on. And people become, if you're raised in an area and you know people, you grew up with them, you become a cop, some of them become criminals. It's easy to cross the line and engage in criminal activity because you knew the people, you grew up with them, and officers can have a sense of impunity. Like, well, I'm mad at someone and I didn't catch him with Xanax, so I put Xanax on him. I saw that that's what was going on. But the other things, assault and battery, targeting. So when the mayor and the others got a lot of those emails, people at first thought, oh, this can't be true. It is true. So then people become held liable. Now, some of the verses I'm quoting, it said, when judgment came in Revelation and some of the others, people were angry or they were mad because the light started shining. And so some of that is what you see. Some of that is what you see. I don't remember the verses that they quoted or spoke about in the Mass today. The one I was quoting earlier, I think it's from Colossians, but it says, Jesus, having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. I mentioned yesterday's video, I think, you had different responses of the Jewish nation to being under oppression. Some were called zealots. Zealots they took up an armed insurgency against Rome. And you had different groups. But Jesus, his way was a way of nonviolence, but it did not mean judgment in a violent way would not come, meaning the destruction of Jerusalem, which Jesus prophesied. And I said in that first video today, when Jesus said that, he said, there will not be a stone standing, this whole city, this whole Jerusalem, which was, they had their law system there. They had a degree of autonomy in their region, even though they were under the federal government, if you will, of Rome. Each local region had its own autonomy. Or in Jerusalem, they had their own sort of court system and everything went on. But they can only do certain things. In many of the things we deal with, you'll notice there's federal law that normally comes in and then does investigations. A lot of my friends would tell me in the last few months, actually, we see the feds here, and they're openly here, driving around their vehicles. I said, well, yes, probably, because they want local law enforcement to know. And everybody knows they're not here for people that are in drugs and problems, and it's a problem. It's a problem. People are addicted, and they're not really looking for crimes of people that are addicted on drugs. They're looking for cooperation with law enforcement in illegal activity. That's what feds do. So it's obvious they're here. I've had many of my friends tell me, oh, we see their vehicles. So when they're driving in vehicles, which they want the local people to know, in Flower Bluff, they're all over there. And so that's for a reason. They're not in hiding. They're letting them know we're now here. And they're also stationed at the Naval Air Station, which is in Flower Bluff, right there. So there's enough that's happened. When crimes were reported by a citizen, and multiple times over a period of years, real crimes, not little things, by officers or by a police department, everyone becomes liable if you had knowledge of that crime and you're in government, city government. So that's the way it goes. When I was driving out here, I saw, we're going to just talk a little bit. I don't know if I'll make a whole bunch of these. I might jump in the ocean in a little while, but I had some dice in my car, and it reminds me of a few years ago. There's a verse that says, the die is cast into the lot, but the whole disposing thereof is from the Lord. I like that. It means sometimes in Vietnam, sometimes when our troops came under fire, they would call in friendly fire. They would say, our location is under such attack that just go ahead, bomb all of us. Whoever makes it, makes it. I thought of that when I read that verse a few years ago, that the die is cast into the lot. When you expose crimes or talk about, it's kind of like an unfair game, because that's why it's so important to not have corruption within police departments, because they will organize. They might have one of their other friends, then they won't say, look, this guy's reporting crimes, go get him. They might call on the radio, hey, we have a problem with somebody, go follow this guy. So it's organized crime in the sense that they got everything used. Normally, if you have corrupt prosecutions, Ken Anderson case with Michael Morton, there is absolutely for years and years in that Michael Morton case, there was corruption, lying, everything. The most they could get was, I think they got Ken Anderson to do 3 days in a city jail. He was the prosecutor who was framing Michael Morton. And it was because of him that serial killer got off and killed again. There should be some type of... So the system, what I'm showing you in these videos, is the system is so off track and criminal that system is not to be respected at that degree. In Scripture, you have a system of law. I mentioned it in the last video, natural law. And so if somebody committed a crime and somebody else said they committed a crime, you go before judges, elders, and they just hear both sides. But our system is one where you build a career. I remember they interviewed the jurors later on after Michael Morton was released, and the jurors were deceived by that prosecutor. And they said, oh, he was so eloquent, he was like a movie star in that courtroom, and that's what persuaded us. That's not law. My friend David Martin, let me tell you this one. We'll end on this one because these are just little updates. David Martin shot his best friend with a shotgun many years ago. And David Martin killed him. And his mother, they were poor. This is you, Andy, and David, the same family. Friends you've seen on videos. And his mother did not have money to hire a lawyer. And she asked around and said, who would be the best lawyer that I could get for my son? And they said, some guy over in Dallas. I keep forgetting the name. They told me the name. Sheldon or something. Shelton. But she went and asked for him. He was a top lawyer. And they said, oh, he's not in right now. And the mother said, I'll just wait here in the office. So she waited all day. No, he's not in. He's not coming back. He was there. But finally, she would not leave. And the lawyer had to finally go home, so he came out of his office. What do you want me to do for you, dear? And he represented David Martin, my friend, in the murder of his best friend. And he did it pro bono for free. He was the same lawyer who defended Jack Ruby, who shot Lee Harvey Oswald. So he was a good lawyer. He got my friend David off. He got him off. But David will never forget this one. He's told me this more than once. He said, you know, John, after the trial, they allowed him, I'm not sure how this evidence was permitted, but they allowed David to testify about the friend that he killed. And he gave a story that one time they were out, not hunting, but out in the field, and his friend shot a bird, some type of bird. David remembers it was like an ice bird, not a dove or something that you would hunt. And the bird fell, but a big bird. And it didn't die. And David's friend, who he killed, said to his son, kill that bird. And the little boy was afraid to. And the father, who was the one David murdered, told the boy, kill it, kill it. And he made his son shoot that bird and kill it. That was part of the story that David gave. Now, after all the testimony and the evidence David said, one thing he'll never forget is when he got out, he was declared not guilty. An old lady came up to him. She was a juror on his trial. And out of all the things she could have said to David, out of all the evidence he told me, everything that came out, she said, oh, I loved that story about the bird. And David said, I got her vote, John, because of a bird story. And David, though he was declared innocent, not guilty, he said, can you believe that? And he says, can you believe that that's how our system is? We're at a time in this country, not just for these things, but things have gone on for a very long period of time. And the cup is full. The cup is full. We live in a little bit of a deception in this country, thinking everything's going to go the way it's been going, and it's not. It's not. We're going to see things that we've not seen in our lifetime. So I wanted you to get a feel for that. I wanted you to also see how hard it is when you speak out on these issues. I've been hassled for a long time now. Followed and trailed and pulled over and for a very long time. And the system works to the benefit of those that are cops that are doing illegal stuff. Many of their fellow cops know. And because look, I'm familiar with a lot of this. We might have had firefighters we knew were doing stuff, not breaking the law, but they were not cops, but, you know, things they're not supposed to do. And everybody knows about it. One of the things that happened at the fire department in Kingsville, we used to have a chief, I told this story before. Chief Garza. I liked the chief, Corando Garza. But he was we had 2 ambulances, at times 3, and it was common for the chiefs to say, go run an errand for me in the ambulance. Go pick up something from the store for me or something like that. And I would always be upset because I said, look, that's the frontline unit, you got them running around. But, so he had a flat out by Rivera, and this was the fire department in Kingsville. So this was maybe 20-something miles. But this was regular routine for many years. Other chiefs did it, captains did it. Used the ambulance, says, go do this for me, run out for. So I came to work one morning. It's not too long before I retired. And they said, can you believe what the chief did last night? What? He sent the ambulance, he had a flat. He sent the ambulance all the way to Rivera to help him with the flat. I blew it. I blew my stack. Every captain, everybody at that department knew this was going on. But it was not right. But now, you always had a backup ambulance, but still, you sent the medics out, paramedics, backup sometimes with EMTs. You weren't supposed to do that, and he sent them all the way out of town. So I wrote letters. I didn't have the blog, the website. I wrote all the letters. I said, look, he's been using it. None of the commissioners believed that it was happening. But then they interviewed up the other captains. And it was in the Kingsville Record front page. He retired. He did it because of that. And when the commissioners interviewed the other captains, is this true? Is John nuts? They said, well, no. They asked him, well, how could you let that go on for so long? They just got used to it. At one point in that, Al Lopez, who became the chief after that chief retired, these are all good guys. I love all these guys. But at one point, Al Lopez, who represented us as the union guys, he was the captain, but our union president, he said, John, the chief wants to ask you something. And I was working at the other station. He says, he wants to know if you can just drop it all. And I said, I was rough. I said, tell him I'll drop it as soon as he resigns or retires. And he retired. But that was going on. In-house, meaning everybody that worked there knew that was going on. And that was nothing compared to the things you've heard me talk about. So it's very common for people within a department, fire, police, to know, oh, this guy, we got problems with him. But when you're dealing with, officers actually assaulting people and all and targeting them, those are felony crimes. So when you let all that go on, those that had knowledge of it, they'll be held responsible as well. So Jesus, it says, defeated the principalities and powers, and he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. And they might have thought, Pilate said to Jesus, don't you know that I have the power, the ultimate power of corrupt government is to execute an innocent man, which happens in this country. He said, don't you know I have the authority, I can kill you. And Jesus said, you have no authority except what my Father has given you. And so, Jesus was vindicated. Pilate's dead, waiting for the final judgment. We'll talk about that in the future. But I wanted you to get a feel and a sense. I want you to see. There's enough out there now. There's enough that I wrote, documented. This is 2-something years these things have been going on. 3 years now, maybe. So there's enough now. But this is a process of the church. This is a process. God wants to bring forth righteousness. Okay, this is number 2 for today. And we'll just do a few like this.